Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Today we are honored to be hosting Dr. Axana Rodrigues-Torres. Dr. Rodrigues-Torres was born in Colombia and immigrated to the United States with her parents as asylees. When she first arrived in the States, Dr. Torres worked many different jobs while she learned English as a second language, but she always dreamed of returning to her goal of becoming a medical doctor. She then started taking her general education courses at 3 different community colleges: American River College, Sacramento City College, and Cosumnes River College. She transferred to CSU Sacramento and then UC Davis, where she double majored in neurobiology, physiology and behavior, and psychology. She also earned a master's in public health at UC Davis. Dr. Rodrigues-Torres earned her medical degree from UC Irvine and is currently in her internal medicine residency at Harvard Association, Massachusetts General Hospital. She has a continued focus on providing primary care for underserved and minority populations. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A section. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Torres.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Axana, I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you, guys, Jubin and PreMedCC, Madeline, for inviting me to this talk today. I'm very privileged to be here with you guys. And so I'm gonna share the screen to start. Do I have, okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my talk today is called From Colombia to Community College and Instructor at Harvard, my 22 years journey to medicine. Please feel free to jot all your questions. I'll be happy to answer. That's why we're here. And as Madeline pointed out, thank you for that introduction. I'm first-year resident in the internal medicine program here at Massachusetts General Hospital. So where does my story begin? So Jubin knows me very well since my journey here in the US, my educational journey in the US started. He probably doesn't know some of these details, so I'm going to fill in a lot of the details, but I'm from a little town called Sogamoso in the department or state of Boyacá. It's kind of a semi-rural town where my childhood started to happen. It started to happen with my grandparents, and at first my mom was a single mom. She was very young, so while she was looking for a job, I was being raised in this town by her. And these are some of the pictures that of me growing up. I think that these are some of my mom's treasures that I sometimes that I got to steal one day. This is my my childhood dog, German Shepherd, that would guard me down. Was probably bigger than me at the time, but would guard me down wherever we went. And yeah, those are my some of my baby pictures. And so my love for medicine actually starts very innately from that love from my grandparents. This is a picture of us in 2018. Of course, I couldn't really find a picture of us when I was little, but they really took me in as another one of their daughters. And one of the main things that that they did within the community, especially my grandpa, he's I always call him the Colombian version of Bernie Sanders, because he's very much for social justice. He's very much a huge community advocate, would take me to all these meetings, would you know, fight for people's rights, for workers' rights. And you know, he never had university or upper and a higher degree university. They were both pretty much between middle school and high school graduates, but they were very much into me loving science, and they did a great job. I really don't know how they did it, but I really loved to school and learning and studying. He then taught me chess, and I would spend a lot of time with them. Then he got me into starting to love science, and he asked me, he actually asked me the funniest question. When I was 5 years old, he said, in a very jokingly way, like never traumatizing or anything, he actually asked me, would you like to open me up when I die? Would you like to see how a body is inside? And I didn't know like the concept of dying or anything. I just thought that it was wonderful. Oh my God, you can do that, actually see someone's insides. But all of this just seated in me that love for science, and then in a way that I didn't know at the time, also my love for community advocacy and for social justice. So there they are. Then we moved to Bogota, the capital of Colombia. And of course, this was the big city. At this time, I moved in now with my mom and my stepdad. So it was kind of a big transition because my parents who I knew as parents were my grandparents. And now I had another set of parents. Violeta, I just saw Violeta's message from to everyone that I won the first chess championship as a child, and that was there in Sogamoso. Thank you, Violeta. I love how much my friends know me, and I have a few friends here connected today. Thank you so much, all of you. So yeah, I adapted to the new city and finished my elementary and secondary school. I actually went to 6 different schools in between moving from one place to another. And this picture here on the right is Ingrid. This is my best friend from high school. She'll be important for my story, but this is us like 13 years old. And Jubin, you can make fun of me if you wanna. You're allowed. My hair continues to still be a huge mess. But I graduated in this high school that was very important for my upbringing and my formation. This was a Catholic school, and this here is Sister Ludis. She was my professor at the time, and it turns out that 20 plus years later, she continues to be my spiritual guide to today. She's been, we did a lot of community service while in school. We would go to very, very poor neighborhoods, bring toys, do activities with the children. And then she went on to be a missionary in Tanzania for over a decade. In the past 20 plus years, I've only seen her once again, but we're connected and we talk almost every day. She got every possible disease, parasitosis that there can be, that you can get in a place in like rural Africa, going from malaria to something called neurocysticercosis, which is a bug that goes up to your brain. She had a lot of illnesses that thankfully didn't end her life. She was able to return to Colombia, and now she continues to do missions in Colombia. But she is critical for the mission that I carry. I also worked in the geriatric service at the time. It must have been my grandparents. It must have been my love for, I guess, with my interaction with my grandparents as a child and growing up. I think I became an old soul And I think that with a few of my friends, we always joke that we're all souls. And I'm very, very, very attracted always to magnetize to the elderly. They're just fascinating on their stories, their experiences, how much they can teach you. And so at the time I started to discover these skills, and that was something that I was able to enjoy as part of the community service that we did, the mandatory community service that we did in school. Then at the same time, also in Bogota, my beloved school, Universidad Nacional de Colombia, at the same time while I was doing my high school, I was also studying music in this is the largest public school in Colombia, and I was studying music there. It turns out that at the time we had we would sell candy inside the school in one of those little carts, and I would work there during my vacation time, and I would take a bunch of courses with chess, with skating, with basketball, and I would also work with my family, my grandparents and my uncles, and yeah, that was another thing. I always very much enjoyed working because I knew that growing up, finances were always something that would get on the way. And so for me, working meant that I got a little bit more on one hand of independence, didn't have to ask my mom or someone else for money. And at the same time, I could maybe contribute if needed. So it was a very good experience, and it was my place to become a doctora. It was so set in my head, it has to be medicine at this place. But there was one minor problem. Each semester, this is the faculty of medicine at the school, and each semester they were taking about somewhere between 6,000 to 7,000 applications for 120 spots per semester. So you can imagine that this dream of someone growing up, everyone would say, I want to go to medical school at the Universidad Nacional. And the next question would be like, what's your plan B? Because it's just so tough. And yeah, I didn't get in the first time. You finish high school in Colombia and you go straight into medical school. So I finished high school at the age of 15. I became 16 right away. We only go to 11. We don't go to 12th grade. And so there I was. I was not admitted. It was a very tough exam. And that was kind of one of my first big rejections. I got admitted at a couple of private schools, but I really couldn't afford the price for those schools. So I decided that I was going to, because this was a public university, I decided that I was going to sit in the classes like if I had been admitted, like if I was a first semester medical student. And I did for a semester. No one knew. I made friends, I met people, and I kept studying so I could take the test again. Little did people know it. And of course, they learned later when I actually made it. The second time I actually made it, and it was the happiest time for me. However, 1 year later, my family, this I call the first big heartbreak. At the age of 17, when I was super happy about my dream school, my place, my grandparents, then my stepdad from Nicaragua had a lot of political issues were following him, and we had to request asylum in the US. And this was very abrupt. This was very sudden. and I only had probably a few days to let my school know I have to go. There's like no choice. They told me we will save your spot up to a year. So I left without knowing whether I would go back, and this meant a new whole world. And so, like Steve Jobs used to say, when you look back, the dots connect. Every end is a new beginning, and I call this my first restart. It was very tough, especially to leave medicine and to live my whole life as a whole. But my career was something very beloved to me for my whole life. It was something that was just very intrinsic. So I said, if I'm gonna be away and if I'm going to take time off, if I do return, I need to return bilingual. I can't. And so I ended up signing up at Fremont Adult School there in Sacramento downtown. It's N Street and 24th Street. I learned the way in the bus at the beginning. It was really, really tough. I thought I knew a little bit of English at the time, that I had learned a little bit of grammar in high school. Well, it turned out I knew nothing. Like when they spoke to me, I could not understand a word. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. I don't know, what am I going to do? And in between homesickness and having to study, I decided I have to get my mind super busy and just think about the things that I have to do to make progress, because this thing of learning a language is about really immersion and really trying to learn things. So my goal was at least 10 new words a day and learn how to use them and learn how to say them and pay attention in the train, pay attention in the bus to see if people, if I can still start understanding people, or if I make attempts to make myself understood or things like that. And I knew it was gonna be, at times they were gonna make fun of me, and it was that challenge, but it needed to be done. So I did a lot of, I worked in several things with my mom and during our own immigration process, our own immigration visits. I started to see the community in California, the immigrant community, the Latino community. I started to realize how many gaps, how large gaps there were. And, remember I had in me that very intrinsic recognition for this thirst of social justice, of trying to help people, trying to see how I could. So in the midst of that and seeing how difficult our process was, I started studying the immigration aspect of the processes. And as I was studying at the Fremont Adult School, I started to fill out forms, and I started to see the forms, reading the instructions. I noticed that people, some of our people didn't know even how to read in Spanish, and so I started going, and 1 year later, I actually began my own business as immigration consultant, and then maybe 2 years later, I added the tax preparation after I had learned, and it was a daily learning process for me, because I was even interpreting at the immigration office, sometimes at the IRS, and sometimes I wouldn't understand a word or something. I would have to, look it up, and like during these times, like it wasn't yet that we had the iPhones and all of that. So things, I was just learning as I was going. And in the meantime, of course, with my family in Sacramento, and in 2004 my brother was born, and this is a few years of us in Sacramento, and this is us a little bit more settled in. And I still had this idea that even though I had my business, that that I still missed medicine. I was very also was very happy, and I was very fulfilled with the fact that I was able to help a lot of people with immigration processes. And some cases were really tough, but people would then bring their families. They would whether introduce them to me, or they would invite me to their homes to introduce their families to me. And that was very fulfilling, to see them together again. But I was always lacking something, and wondering whether maybe one day, and as I told you, my school told me that they were going to hold my spot for a year. This was already 4 years later, and I of course didn't return at the time. But 8 years later, I actually asked them. I actually asked the question, the immigration process or the situation is safer for me to go back to Colombia. Would you take me back? Would you readmit me? Of course, without me doing that whole test and readmission process again and everything. Well, they started the case. I had not failed classes or anything like that when I was there. I left for other reasons, as they knew. So they readmitted me, and oh my God, that was my return, the return, I called it. So I finished half of the 6-year program. It's a combined undergrad medical school, and out of the 6 years, I finished 3 years. And then at one point, I returned to California for vacation to visit my parents, my family. And oh, surprise, immigration at the airport, where they pretty much had me under review as I was coming in through the airport, and they told me you can't leave again. And I was like, what's going on? Well, you're a resident here in the US, a permanent resident, and you can't live outside the US for you to keep your residency. So pretty much, in other words, they announced that they were going to challenge my residency. And in other words, what that meant is that they were going to have an immigration judge study my case to see if my permanent residency was to be something that I could keep. So I went for vacation for 3 weeks, and to Sacramento, from Bogota to Sacramento, and I found out that I couldn't go back to Bogota. This time I couldn't even say goodbye to, again, my grandparents, the people in my school. This time I was gone, and I was just like, I can't go back. This time around, now I had friends there who challenged my decision and said, like, there's no way that you can do that again. You have to come back and finish your medical school, otherwise you're going to abandon it again. And I said, nope, I'm not going to abandon the career. Even if I stay here in the US, I'm going to do whatever it takes that I need to do. For me, I don't know what it is that I need to do to go to medical school. in the US. I've never asked. I know it's pricey. That's all I know. I don't know the process, but if I do stay here, I promise, and I told my grandparents, my promise to you is that I will stay here, but I will not be working full time. They knew that for the 8 years that I had the immigration consulting and the tax preparation office, I was working from like 6 a.m. to 10, 11 p.m. I was working pretty much by myself until my mom helped me. At that time, my mom started to help because I had hundreds and hundreds. I probably had close to 2,000 clients, and I kept receiving referrals, and so people knew that I cared and that I loved my job, and that you know, if they were gonna find an honest answer on things, I would give them to them. So yeah, I had been able to return to Colombia for school because I inherited the business to my parents. To today, they still see some of my clients at home, my former clients, that is. So I returned, and I did not know. And this is kind of one stop that I want to make a point of reflection, because I had to profoundly, after this second big heartbreak, I have to profoundly ask and connect to my very, very deep root and my very, very deep core. And I want you to all think about your why. What is your why? This why is going to lead you through the valleys and the mountains and the hills and uphills and everything that the journey will bring you. For me, that why is my family, continues to be my family. In here, my parents, my brother, who's now almost 18, my grandparents, always, of course, and I don't have pictures here of my aunt and uncles, but Peluchin, my cat, who accompanied me for 17 years and has transitioned to a better life as of about 2 years ago, and Shadow, who is still with us and is almost 10 years of age. But this is my why. My why of the love for all the things that they seeded in me, all the just innate love for humanity, like Paul Farmer would say. That is my why, and I asked, and here I was. I first went to Sac State. I made my very, very, very good friend at that time in Sac State, Dr. Miguel Molina, who's now working at Sacramento City College. And he told me, bring me all the GE units from the community college. So guess what? I ended up going crazy. I said, you know, if I'm gonna do GE classes, if I went from almost, you know, seeing patients in the clinical wards in Colombia back to GE courses in the community college, I have to do this fast. I need to do this fast. And a lot of these courses, the material I've at some point in my life I've seen in Spanish. I'll probably be relearning it in English. And a lot of stuff, of course, like American history and political science and all those things that I saw myself doing that I couldn't believe I was doing. But so I ended up taking, I don't recommend you do this. I ended up taking 25, 26, one semester I took 28 units. Between the three colleges, all of them, Los Rios community colleges, are Los Rios community the district, and they're all beloved to me because they all gave me all that education that I needed. And actually, a lot of my pre-med requirements, if not all of them, were completed. All the lower division pre-med requirements were completed at the community college, which I absolutely recommend that people do, because things like general chemistry, organic chemistry, all those things are best to be done like in a small setting, as opposed to when I transitioned to Sac State and UC Davis. These freshmen and sophomores, where a lot of people have traveled like with 300 other peers studying these courses and having teaching assistants help them as opposed to the teacher. So anyway, that's my story. I later transitioned to Sac State. When I transitioned to Sac State, I was still actually also taking classes at American River College, which was my home community college. So during those 2 years, I probably, and I had time for nothing. I was taking between 25 to 28 units, and all I had time was to like go from one school to the other while I was eating to just commute. And it turns out that UC Davis sent a late acceptance into the neurobiology program, the neurobiology, physiology, and behavior, and I ended up transitioning there. It was kind of unexpected. I don't know. They had told me that I wasn't going to be admitted because of the number of units, but I don't know. You just have to stick to the things that you put your mindset. And yes, people will tell you, no, it can't be done, this and that. Well, I still applied. I remember I applied the last day that UC applications were due, and there I was. And you might wonder, none of this I did alone, absolutely nothing. To start with, during my time and I'll show you some of the activities, but a lot of this actually started with Jubin in the American River College, because meeting him and then going to the conference that he founded, and that later I also participated in, led me to meeting my main mentor, Dr. Mark Diaz. He's been amazing. He's been amazing to all the students that reach out to him, and he's in Sacramento. So always help each other. Always, there's no such a thing as, you guys will all do the things that you want to do and get to the places and to the opportunities that you need to get to your goals. So help each other, enjoy the journey. And like Marco Angulo, who will be a speaker later next year, he always says, show up and show up a lot. Opportunities will arise. So these are some of the activities that I did, because that was the other thing. I started signing up for things, but the very first thing was the pre-med surgical internship, also led by Juvin. I know that Juvin told me to not talk about him, but I just have to say, in the meantime for that, it turns out that volunteer services at the hospital led me to interpreting and translation services, which I had already done. So they let me volunteer, at the immigration service. So, and because I had the past knowledge of medical Spanish, and so that was good. And later on, of course, I joined the big conference that we used to lead, the annual big conference. Clinica Tepati was the main reason for which I transferred from Sacramento State to UC Davis. That was a very special place that I really wanted to make sure that I could. It was the place, and these activities made all this effort, gave it purpose. Being able to go back to my community, being able to help my community, being able to help the student body, and find purpose that way. So all that went along. Also, I mean, I know Juin told me to not talk about him, but because of his nomination, I actually got the UC System President Leadership Award, and this is us with Janet Napolitano that year. And they made me a banner in UC Davis, which I have at home, and I gave it to my parents. But yeah, I graduated, and my grandparents for the first time came. I hadn't seen them in 4 years. I graduated in UC Davis. Then I did my MPH also in UC Davis, and I went for medical school. And here is a fun fact. Starting medical school, I shaved my head. And I did. I used to always donate my hair, but I decided to fully donate it. And I did that year especially for alopecia. Here is a picture of how I started medical school, and here is a picture of me with 5 months later. So that's kind of what medical school does to you. You can ask me questions about that, but no. UC Irvine was my place. I was part of PreMedCC, which is Programming Medical Education for the Latino community. Actually, after that, I got a little bit, and I'll show you my bestie from medical school, who is Violeta, who is in the talk. And we actually did a lot of things outside the programs, but what we did do was all the work with the Latino community, especially in the pandemic. I'll talk more about that. But here I was, finally with a white coat on, the dream of finally, after so many years, I was back in medical school, and this time it was for good. And here I was in the free clinic, volunteering for on Saturday, as we used to do in Clinica Tepati. Now we were at the Lestona clinic. Here, this is me using the ultrasound machine for the first time and seeing my blood flow in my neck veins and arteries. And then I came to Boston for the first time at the end of my first year. This turned out to be another serendipity thing, for which you show up a lot and things happen. And I applied. I came to this place, absolutely fell in love. I had this mentor it was in neurology, Dr. Alessandro Biffi. We published the work that we started working on that summer. I returned. We published because I did return between second and third year of medical school. I did return to Boston for 2 years because this match with this lab was absolutely amazing. The people were awesome. I couldn't be happier, and I just wanted to be here, and I just wanted to graduate medical school here. But of course, I needed to. So this is some of what some of the things I did. I went to Montreal, and I went to Hawaii with my lab from sort of presentations. To Hawaii, I went with my brother, which that was very nice. And during medical school, I took up running. So that's another point of reflection. I want to invite you all to do the things that give you energy in your personal space, in your personal time, and that give you that energy that you need to continue. You need that energy so that you can continue helping the world. For me, it has been running. I'm a turtle runner, totally slow, the last of the pack always, but I do it. I returned to Colombia after I was granted US citizenship, and I was the happiest. Here I am at my medical school. I returned. Here I am at my university. As I return almost a decade later, this is us again, my family, always my why. This is here Ingrid, my high school, my high school best friend, my cousin. And this slide I brought from my presentation when I left my lab here in Boston after 2 years. And, I gave them a summary. This is the published work. This is what's pending. And I want you to see this because I did not change this slide. I wrote, never be afraid of dreaming big. Therefore, I wish to come back to MGH for residency. I will work hard for it. Keep in mind, I still had 2 more years of medical school to ahead of me, the clinical years. I did not change this slide. You need to put that thought in the universe. It will happen. And here we are with Violeta. We worked a lot during those clinical years, well, during all years in medical school, but during those clinical years, the pandemic happened. And it was time to help. Our community was in much need. Orange County, that part of Orange County, as everywhere else, as you know, all our patients in the ICU were, for the most part, Spanish-speaking only, isolated family members, also Spanish-speaking only. Had to have a lot of those hard conversations with families. Usually the Spanish-speaking person of the team, of the medical team, was, guess who? Us, of course. So carrying a lot of the way through, but certainly growing a lot and confirming the reasons for which we were doing and sacrifices that we had done throughout so many years. I was able to come back. I'm privileged to see my family again in the midst of a pandemic. And this is me after finishing all of the things that requirements to graduate. This is us leaving the vaccination center, my grandparents getting their second shot, COVID shot. My mom still couldn't get it because she was too young. There weren't enough vaccines for her age. And so unfortunately, everyone at home got COVID, probably 2 weeks after that other picture. This is my mom recovering. We actually saw it really, really serious. I didn't know what was going to happen. She was very ill. So my grandparents were less symptomatic because they were vaccinated. But we had the victory and we celebrated. We celebrated that I was gonna graduate. Sorry, I still get a little emotional because yeah, all of my family members here, my uncles, they all got COVID. They were all very sick. And at the time, I was kind of the doctor at the house and the one that had managed so many patients with COVID. I didn't know what was going to happen, but at least I felt that they felt a little bit more secure that I was there at home with them. And I think that helped a little bit. So I returned to Irvine to give my badge back, my medical student badge. And one of the best moments of my life, 22 years later, I started medical school at 16, graduated at 38. My dad unfortunately couldn't come in person, so Dr. Diaz went, and my mom, at this time, my mom was still in the post-COVID state, very, very weak, but she made it there so that the both of them could hood me in them. And then at home, then my dad could hood me as well. More celebration at home. And here I am with my best friends from the journey. I like to call them mentors and friends collected along the way. Sorry. So here I am at home. These here are my community college friends. So Dr. Metter and Rebecca and Jasprit, and of course, Dr. Diaz. And here is one of my biggest mentors, Jose Rea in UC Irvine, who's already retired. And then, so this is the collection of my friends, because Ingrid came from Colombia, now with her little daughter, Ingrid from high school, remember? Now with her husband and with her little one, Victoria. Lanisha is my first community college friend. And of course, Violeta from medical school, and Kimberly, also present. Both Violeta and Kimberly are present here today from UC Davis. So very my treasures along the way. Left California to join NGH and to wear a badge called doctor, and I couldn't really introduce myself to a patient as doctor the first time, and it was the weirdest thing. This is the day of my white coat, as with the first white coat with the MD after my name at my dream place. Now I take my walks by Charles River after work when I can, not when it's 20 degrees, because as of right now. And as I try to enjoy the journey, I collect the sunsets. The last setback / privilege opportunity I will share with you is this is my grandma. We're exercising. This is back in probably 2 years ago with my grandparents. We were exercising. She was walking. As of this year, she started to have these complaints of feeling stiffness in her legs. So she went from this, as you see her, all happy and exercising and walking, to almost not being able to walk. And no one could diagnose her, and everyone, she went misdiagnosed for months and months. And now that I went at the end of October, she was barely walking. I did a full workup, and she ended up having a tumor, a meningioma in her spine at the level T3, pretty much probably 2 centimeters below the neck. So she had a major surgery, but that's not the main part. The main part is how mistreated we were throughout the whole process, and how stressful that made the whole process twice as much, 3 times as much as it needed to be. And there is 1,000 complaints I have about the healthcare system in Colombia, and there's a lot of those complaints that potentially can happen here for people as patients. But one thing that I kept thinking, why do people not do this with vocation and love? Why are the healthcare workers mistreating people like this, and sometimes having to fight for the most basic things? And it was so painful to see. It was almost like, I told Dr. Diaz, my mentor, it's like desecrating the privilege of being a physician. And I ask you, all of you today, to always respect your patients. You will get there. And I will ask you, even if you're tired, if you're worn out, always know that your patients aren't there because they choose to. They're there in pain. They're there because they need to. And they're depending on you and how you treat them, what you do for them. You can always go 1 extra mile for people. Yes, I'll post my email. This is our victory picture again. My grandma is here in bed, and there's all of us together with her. We went through a lot, and everyone told me, oh my God, Axana, had you not been here, she wouldn't have been diagnosed, she wouldn't have been treated. I think that the real hero here is her, because she's so strong. And she is so, so strong. This is the day I left a couple of weeks ago. And she went from almost not being able to walk to walking with a floating walker. And this is the gift that she decided to give to all of us for Christmas. Just like I got the graduation gift of my family surviving COVID, I got the Christmas gift of an early Christmas gift of seeing her doing all this. Right now, she has a complication with her eye, an inflammation, a uveitis that is complex, but she's pushing through as she does, and her resilience is unmeasurable. I want you to enjoy that. Anyway, this is awesome because she couldn't take 3 steps on her own without support before the surgery. So I want to wrap up and say, is this perfect? No, never. Do you have problems to get there every day? Fears, setbacks, doubts. Doubts, I think that we just become comfortable with the uncomfortable. You can name it all. But one thing for sure is that you are unique, you are special, and you can do anything that you set your mind to do. Choose your vocation and do it with love. With every challenge, there is an opportunity picking its way at you. Let it come to you, let it discover you, let it show you what you're capable of. And I use this app that comes in. I send my friends pictures of this as well. I love this one. You'll survive this just like you survived every other hardship that's been placed before you. I know each one of you has serious hardships. I know it. I know you all have heavy hearts for different reasons. And I know that you are pursuing what you are pursuing because you have a lot of love and a lot of potential to give to your communities. I'll finish with a quote from Paulo Coelho. A boat is safe in the harbor, but this is not the purpose of a boat. Go conquer the world. Your community and loved ones await. Thank you all. And I'll share my email. All right. So how do we go about the questions?
How did you manage to handle the stress of all the units you were taking in one semester? I could answer that. She's nuts, but
yeah, no, seriously. I think that there was, as I said, there was a lot of support. This is not done alone. There was a lot of support in this case by my parents. I have to give all the credit to my parents. I was at home, and they were like they pretty much didn't ask anything of me like to be done at home at the time. Thankfully, I had the financial aid, so financially I didn't have to ask for help. But a lot of it needed to be time management. It was walking into a hurricane. I do not recommend it. especially because as you know, and at that time, I don't know if this is still the case, at that time they said that for every unit you had to calculate like 1 hour of coursework and 3 hours of like homework, and so so I don't I did it because of like I was too rushed to get to a point where I could apply to medical school. But I don't think that a lot of you guys like need to rush that much, and it's better to do things, you know, especially for Mcat and all of that, to not rush things and to take your time studying and to get those good grades, if at all possible. And then do your activities that, you know, your hobbies, get set some time to exercise, to spend with family. That will definitely bring you back the energy, and definitely sleep when you can too.
Yeah, there is you don't get an award for taking too many units. There's no cookie, or you don't get priority for that. So I think Axana is just somebody very unique that was able to pull that off, and she had a lot of family support. Her mom is an excellent cook, by the way, and if I ever lived there, I would weigh like 600 pounds. But I've tried to move in her house, but hasn't been successful. But in reality, joking aside, I think she is a very unique person. She's kind of the outlier, and it is not recommended. And matter of fact, if you have 28 units and get a 2.0, and then you have a 4.0 and only 15 units or 12 units, guess who's going to get into medical school? The person with the 4.0. So, what would you tell students juggling work and school? How did you prioritize volunteering, internship, and non-paid activities while making ends meet?
So again, I wasn't paying rent at that time. I would give something minor in relation to rent, and like you said, the food at home was something that helped me with that cost. So I think that there are points where people who need to work because they have their expenses, because they are raising their own family, because of many reasons. It would be best if, of course, if they can find a job that would allow them to have some exposure to the medical field in somehow. And you know, there's a lot of activities that you can do that aren't necessarily, you know, in a medical office necessarily. Like there's a lot of things that can like services of different types, not necessarily medical services, given that medical services are so limited right now, like in person. And weigh your options. I know that like community colleges, they have so many resources at where they at the offices in American River College. It was with Mesa, where they had all the opportunities put together, and you can, you know, compare and assess. Don't, you know, if your time is very limited, don't walk right into things like right away, but assess what you can actually do. And like Jubin said, just like getting that 4.0, is also important to do that activity, to do it really well, because that activity most likely is going to bring a letter of recommendation as well. And again, you want to do the things that you do with love, and get the most out of it. So I would say sit down with your options and look what you can do. And of course, if you can get paid. Now there's a lot of scholarships too. I remember that there was probably not a single week that I wasn't applying for something. There's always scholarships. So to try, you know, and sometimes for those scholarships, for those programs, you also need to have like your professors. backing you up in different ways, like letters of recommendation or things like that. So that's a good way to start building that rapport with teachers that can give you letters of recommendation later. They can write it for a scholarship or for an activity, and later on they can modify it for medical school. And that's a great way of interacting early with professors. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, and there's actually a presentation that's going to be done on the December 27th on how to navigate clinical experience and COVID and actually not do it for free. Bottom line is, if you need to work and pay for your housing and food, but there's a lot of tricks that can be done, and there's a lot of things that can happen. So come to that session. There's going to be a lot of information in that session. This one is, how did you develop resilience, focus as a student when you were your family's primary caregiver advocate, and certainly during COVID and other parts of it?
How did I develop resilience through when
resilience and focus as a student when you were your family's primary advocate and caregiver?
So just to make sure, this is during the time that they were ill with COVID?
Just in general, like, how did you stay focused and have resilience?
Yeah. Yeah, all of these are really great questions because I actually developed this episode of gastritis that I had to ask my radiologist friend in Colombia to ultrasound me, because I was like, do I have an episode of pancreatitis because of the pain? So the stress is so real that I already know when my body is getting to a point of the stress is very real, especially when there's so much uncertainty. And I think this is still very tough for me to do, especially after this experience that I had with the healthcare system there in Colombia, and with my grandma being so ill, at 82 years old of age and being so delicate. I think that part of the resilience is accepting that there is so much that is out of your control, and that the main thing to do is to focus on those things that you can actually do, and then it's obviously tough to do. It's easier to be said to let go, but I don't think that we can let go with our loved ones. I think that there's always that sense of advocacy, that sense of fighting on their behalf. And I think that has a self-feedback system that helps you continue going, because you see a lot of the things that they need, and you see how to bridge a lot of these gaps. And once you see that, like Cesar Chavez used to say, once you see these things, once you educate people, you cannot uneducate them, and you cannot unsee the things that you're aware of now. So those things, and it becomes your language. Sometimes I talk, and I would talk and still talk with medical providers that see my grandmother, and they hear me talk, and for me it's a regular dialogue, and they tell me, we understood nothing of what you just said, like and so I think that there is that power that you end up realizing that you're talking things that aren't common knowledge, that are things that you've learned through your education, through your experience, and that you have that thirst of fighting, and that you can do that for your loved ones, and that you have the privilege of having that awareness, and the privilege of being that advocate. I think that all of that packet gives you a sense of resilience. But again, you're not a robot, and there comes times when at least for me, the way I respond in with my body, I will, yeah, when I say it's time to rest, it's time to do something different and try to regain momentum to continue, because if you're unhealthy, if you get sick, then you're not good for your family, for yourself, or no one.
So this is another question. How old were you when you started medical school?
How old was I?
Yep.
I was 16.
No, in the US, I mean.
Oh, in the US. I was actually twice that, 32.
Yeah, and the average medical school this year was 29.3. So
Oh,
people are
really?
saying, yeah, 30, 31, 35. We're actually going to have somebody in a couple of weeks who was 38 when she started medical school. She's a mother, and now she's doing her residency in surgery. So, in her 40s. So,
Oh, do not, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do not, no, do not let that the age number get on the way, especially for women and for everyone. But I think that in a very machista society, and women almost get penalized for being the age they are, which is like, and it's something I've struggled with as well. I mean, I came into medical school at 32, and my peers were, one of them was 21, so 10 years, and I would be like, oh my god. But then I wouldn't, change the life experience. That you are very unique, and you need to know that there is nothing that you can, first of all, there's nothing that you can do about your age, but not only that, you have to realize the amount of experiences that you have that will get you through experiences in the hospital that you will never learn in a textbook. So I think that there is a lot of, and my friends here will agree with me, Violeta, Kimberly, that are a lot of our interactions in the clinic, they don't come from a textbook. They come from our own life experiences that people who are 2021, it's great, they're super smart, it's great that but a lot of times they will not be. I had the experience of this patient's daughter coming and sobbing in my chest as soon as she saw me, because she had seen me the day before, and her mom was about to die. And my co-medical student, she was the person leading the medical management for that patient, and I felt super bad because, oh my god, like, she's not my patient yet, like, because the life experience says it all to patients. And at the end of the day, that skill is going to be absolutely mandatory, just like your skills and your knowledge. That life experience part is going to be absolutely mandatory for you to be truly successful in this career.
So you were not at a disadvantage at all, right? Is that what you were not at a disadvantage at all being older?
Oh, I thought that, no, not at all. You have to realize that all the advantages, that, because as I said, society makes you think that that's a disadvantage, and you get convinced, you convince yourself that that's a disadvantage, that that's against you, that's no.
And how did you manage, of all the things that you were doing in undergrad, like how did you manage, like how did you prioritize? What steps did you take to be able to participate in different things?
Well, I remember ending my my participation in the surgical internship program, because I couldn't participate in that and the conference, and I insisted that I didn't want to quit the.
And you were studying for that little test too, right? at that time?
I was studying for the Mcat. And so sometimes you need the people in your life to pull your ears and like, come here, like a little child, come here. And this is what you're going to do. And, sometimes, some people have the self-diligence to do that on their own. I've been fortunate to have those people in my life to tell me. And it's not that they're telling you you can't do that, because yes, you can, but at what cost? And you need to do these things and still be alive and still be healthy and still be, have quality of life and still. So I think that having all of that in mind, making a list of the important things to you, including your personal life, including your family. For me, it's always been my family and my friends, both from Colombia and from here. And so I think the fact that I've had those mentors, because it was Juvin and also it was Olivia Campa, who's now the head of internal medicine in of one of the persons in internal medicine in UC Davis, and she was another person pulling my ears. You need to focus on that MCAT, stop doing. And so those moments come and they're not challenging your intelligence, they're not challenging your capabilities. It's just a matter of sitting down and kind of getting the things done that need to be done. Those are hurdles that need to be done. And need to be completed as part of a application requirement. So, volunteering those extra 4 or 6 hours a week are not a requirement to that medical school application. The MCAT with a good score is. So
good grades.
The good grades, yeah.
So do you have any tips for the MCAT? What did you do for it while studying? And
yeah, MCAT was a standardized testing for me, has been a little bit of my pitfall. But and I would say do not go rereading your chemistry and physics books, even the MCAT books. Do not go like, let me start reading this like a novel. Practice questions and learn from those questions. Take as many questions as possible, because this is not a physics chemistry test where you memorize the whole thing and understand from page 1 to page 10 all together. This is not that. There's a lot of analytical things that go on and test taking strategies. So go do the questions, practice questions is what I would say that I would have done more of, because I was, and still to today, we're kind of type A, obsessive about the things. I want to learn everything from, and if I don't know like the 10 things out of the 10 things, then if I know 8 things out of the 10, then I think that I'm going to be asked the one thing that I don't know. And that's usually not the case. And even if that was the case, you can usually extrapolate from what you already know. You always know more than you think you do. There's always doubt about ourselves. So be mindful of that as well. And those are great resources that Juin is posting. Yeah, that's what I would say. And for like after step 1 and step 2, I think that one thing that I would have done for MCAT, I still have to take step 3 at this point, but I would have focused more on my wrong questions. I learned to focus on my wrong questions. So because obviously there's something that I don't know for it to be wrong. Usually there can also be I didn't read the question right. So, and I actually did know what they were asking, but I didn't read the question right. So recognizing those things and focusing on those wrong questions as well.
What is the most meaningful experience in your journey to medicine thus far?
My most meaningful experience, I think there's a lot, but there's a lot of power in me. I remember with the free clinic, there was so much power in knowing that I was making a difference for someone who would have otherwise not be seen by a healthcare provider and needed to be seen. For me, that gave me so much purpose of the whole thing. Now, if you ask me the single experience the day before my grandma's surgery, I told Dr. Diaz, it's been 20 plus years on this journey and I would have done the whole thing again and sweat the whole thing again, only because at this point I can contribute and guide her process to do it for this and do it all over again. And I think that represents a lot of the love that I have for my vocation and how privileged I am and that I can recognize that privilege. So I think that recognizing your privilege and advocating and knowing that, again, you now know, you cannot unknow now.
And what did you like about UC Irvine School of Medicine, and why did you choose that school?
So yeah. So initially it was a prime program, because the prime program, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the prime programs at the UC system. Each one is focused on a different group of underserved communities. And so in UC Irvine, it was focused on Latino community, and one of the requirements was to speak Spanish. So for me, coming from UC Davis, having worked with Clínica Tepati so heavily, knowing the Latino community in California so profoundly, being part of them, for me, it made a lot of sense to go there. And as I said, that was confirmed mainly during the time of the pandemic. I mean, even before the pandemic, but during the time of the pandemic, the few of us with Violeta who stepped up to basically be there with the patients, and at that point we could choose whether we would want to see these patients, because we were students, so they weren't going to force us to see COVID positive patients, and so a few of us decided, no, I mean, this is what we've been preparing for. This is exactly it, and this is probably not going to be the last pandemic of our lifetime, and this is the time when our community needs us the most. So I think that was the initial reason, and then we made it work with our with my friends and colleagues there that had that mission, that innate mission. And with Violeta, we also did a lot of education around diabetes, and also during the pandemic around vaccine hesitancy, and given that our communities were the highest rates of unvaccinated people Um, and then going to vaccine places as well, giving shots. So all of that made it very, very much worthwhile. And the second part is that for me, this is nothing that you guys need to do. For me, I felt that it was time to leave UC Davis. And I have to admit, it was very tough to leave UC Davis because I had a great community. I had a lot of support, and it was kind of starting all over, away from home now and everything away. But I felt that I had a new place to conquer, to kind of get to know, and to put another challenge in front of me, and keep growing that way. But again, that's not for everyone. A lot of people choose to stay in the same place, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah.
Did you ever think of other career options like PA, NP, nursing?
Well, I have to say that at the time I didn't know the concept, because I was so focused on medical school since forever, that at the time I didn't even know what PA was, and or NP. Like a lot of NPs and PAs, like I work alongside by them, and I learned a lot from them. So those career choices are depend on your priorities in life and the time commitment that you want to make. But a lot of them work side by side with MDs as well, being supervised, and but they're amazing. They're also very much needed. But I personally didn't, just because of the reasons I'm saying. But I got to know them as I grew up, professionally.
The question is from a first-year medical student. That they've seen a lot of volunteer and research experience for pre-meds, but nothing for medical students. I don't know where, can you answer that? And then you were at Irvine, but you did that research at Harvard. Can you talk to them a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, actually, because a lot of things are for pre-meds, and then you start, a lot of times they take for granted that medical students can now access or have access to to their academic institutions to do research in their field, and that they're gonna knock on that door, and it's not gonna be like they're gonna open each door that I think that's one option in looking for research options. That's one option that in your institution. There are certainly programs, summer programs. Here in Mass General is it's SRTP, the Summer Research Trainee Program, that happens every summer. And I know the big institutions, I know that Yale also, because one of my colleagues that graduated 1 year ahead of me did that too at Yale. She's now finishing emergency medicine after she also did a summer there. So a lot of times you get to know, and it's good to network. For me, networking, I think, came up like naturally in different ways, and it's good to expand your field. But again, you can also do it in your local institution. I don't want you to feel that you need to like explore outside, or else is not, there's a lot of people who started in UC Davis, did their undergrad, medical school, residency, and now faculty in UC Davis, and there's a lot of people who go everywhere, and so I don't want you to feel, but there are those options, and it's just because as a medical student is better. You knock on doors and doors for the most part will open. Yeah.
Very cool. Any more questions, anyone? Anyone? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anyone? Anyone? All right. So any last words of wisdoms, Dr.
Oh God. Just continue on. The fight is already have won by getting up in the morning. That's already sometimes that in and of itself is already the one thing that you can count as the battle being won. So just continue on. If you need to take a break, take the break. That doesn't mean that you're stopping, and keep on going. Choose who you hear and who you do not hear, and continue chasing your dreams, because there's a lot of people in that finish line awaiting for everything you're going to do for the world, and you are already doing for the world.
Very cool. Well, we're gonna let you go. I just posted her email again in the chat. Thank you very much.
Hassan is, sorry, let me, I don't know if I typed it, and yeah, there we go.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night, and good seeing you.
Email me. Please email.